Hello, and thank you for interest in our work. My name is Anthony Leasing Antonio, and I am presenting with AJ Alvero. We're both from Stanford University. Today, we will present work in progress on a project using natural language processing to understand how college application essays inflect schools' college-going cultures. Our study is motivated by disparities in access to higher education, particularly the continuing severe underrepresentation of Latinx populations, and consequently, their ability to earn college degrees. We further note that access to more selective institutions is particularly at issue for Latinx populations, which is significant given those institutions' role in creating pathways to graduate and professional degrees, and more fundamentally in their higher graduation rates. As many have shown, there is also much variation in pan-ethnic Latinx populations, which needs to be considered carefully in this kind of work. With regard to access to higher education, the literature has generally identified individual level factors from socio-demographic characteristics to academic achievement, and also schools as primary influences on access. With regard to schools, they can be understood as stratified sites of access to important kinds of capital for accessing higher education, from academic opportunities to information derived from people in the school, and to a kind of college-going culture that provides norms for post-secondary aspirations and legitimizes certain tastes and choice within that realm. College application represents an interesting artifact of the access process that can be thought of as being influenced jointly by individual and school level factors. In addition, we are motivated by the opportunity to provide new insights on higher ed access using new analytical tools which are surfacing in education due to the availability of more and more extremely large corpora of data on students. Corpora of data on educational processes, education adjacent activities such as social media use and extracurricular activities. Our research question, therefore, is how are Latinx college application essays inflected by the college-going culture of schools? We frame our study around three guiding ideas. One, we presume that college-going cultures exist in schools that provide influential norms for both aspirations for college, as well as more specific tastes in particular kinds of institutions. Research has identified a relationship between college-going culture and access, and McDonough and others have shown, for example, that wealthy prep schools legitimate selective, private, Ivy-centered college choices, while low-income schools feature local, typically two-year options for students. Two, we take seriously the work illustrating that language and language practices are embedded in structures of race and class, and further is intertwined in stratifying processes. Third, we conceive of admission essays as cultural objects. That is, such essays are culture created by students, oriented to specific consumers, and both creators and consumers are interacting within a social world that influences the creation and the reception of those objects. I'll pass it on to AJ now to describe our data and analysis.
Yeah, thanks. Our data come in the form of applications to State U, a large multi-campus public university system. The campuses are spread out across the state and have varying levels of prestige and selectivity, and all of State U's campuses are research institutions that vary in terms of degree and major offerings. The students in our data are every Latinx identifying applicant to State U in the 2015-2016 academic year. For this paper, we focus on applicants from Metro County for several reasons. One, Metro County had the highest number of applicants by county in the data set. Two, there's a lot of diversity in Metro County in terms of socioeconomic status, school types and characteristics, and Latinx identities. And three, it helpfully limits geographic scope while providing a lot of insights and data to work with. The application materials provided by State U include the essays and various metadata, including the seed code from their respective high school, which is the school code used to label the high school. In this presentation, we select metadata about each applicant, their reported household income and gender, and school characteristics such as Latinx enrollment, school type, as in private, charter, or magnet, average applicant GPA to State U by high school, and Title I eligibility, which is determined by whether or not more than 40% of the students have access to free and reduced lunch. So it's a socioeconomic marker. So to give you a little more background on the school level data, they were pulled from a variety of sources, including the vCIES Common Core of Data and the Private School Universe Survey. They provided Latinx enrollment data, Title I eligibility, and school type. Average applicant GPA was provided by state-use public admissions data. And the State Department of Education provided the same data as vCIES for public schools if vCIES did not have data available for a particular school. Also, if a school closed or did not have any data available from these sources, we used whatever latest data was available. So this was the case for only a few schools. For first-year admission to State U in 2015-2016, each applicant had to write 2 essays for the same 2 prompts. To maintain anonymity, we found 2 similar prompts from the common application to stand in for the State U prompts. The first prompt asked students to describe their background or share a story that is important to their identity. And the second prompt asked students to describe an interest or talent that allows them to show their well-roundedness. So for labeling the schools, we had 3 considerations. One was the selectivity of a particular State U campus. 2 was the distance from home, in this case, distance from Metro County. And 3, empirical popularity. Is Campus X a popular school to apply to in Metro County? After we labeled each of the schools in Metro County based on their application patterns to State U. We used publicly available data about State U applicants from the county to label schools as either selective, if many students apply to the selective campuses of State U, local, if applicants targeted campuses closest to Metro County, and distant if they targeted campuses far from Metro County. And although the distant category might evoke images of wealth and travel, two of the 3 least selective campuses are far from Metro County. So next, it's data by school type. This provides an overview of some of the personal characteristics of the applicants as well as the school characteristics. So we can see Latinx enrollment is different across the selective, local, and distant schools, with Latinx enrollment being particularly high for the distant schools. For reported household income, we see that the distant schools also have lower mean and median income. For the school types, for example, we see that the selective schools have many private schools, maybe most of the ones in Metro County, and as well as many charter schools. We also see that Title I enrollment is high for the 3 groups, but is highest in the distant. So it is much higher in the distant, almost by 20%. Finally, we see gender selective is slightly more than local and distant, but overall they reflect national patterns in college enrollment by gender. So to analyze the essays, we used structural topic modeling. Topic modeling is a widely used family of machine learning algorithms and models that find word co-occurrence patterns across a corpus. This process generates clusters of words that co-occur frequently, and these clusters are called the topics. Structural topic modeling is a little different in that it samples metadata about each document along with the words. So for example, as it samples word I in document I, it will also see, for example, the reported household income of the author of that document or their reported gender. So therefore, STM enables researchers to test statistical relationships between these topics and metadata about the document. So we ran STM and generated 20 topics for each of the prompts. And as you can see here, there's a lot of variety. Don't worry about reading every single one, but we showed this to highlight that the topics generated are distinctive, and also importantly, each of these topics represents a score. So for each document receives a score based on one of these 20 topics. And if a document mentions more things related to community, arts, and leadership, it'll get a higher score for that topic. Here we provide 2 examples of topics derived from each prompt as an example of how structural topic modeling works. And again, just to reiterate, each of these topics represent scores that are assigned to essays. They're not labeling the essays. For community arts and leadership, we see that the top words for highest probability in FREX being FREX and higher probability being ways to measure the probabilities for each word. We see that most of the words have to do with community, art, leadership, clubs, etc. And the same thing for the other topics, for the other prompts. So here, for prompt 1, we provide the top essay for community, arts, and leadership and aspirations to help family. Again, just to reiterate, this is the top essay for this topic because it has the highest score for that topic. And you can see a lot of the words that pop up have to do with community and volunteering in church, whereas aspirations to help family mention wanting to make the parents proud, achieving dreams, etc. For prompt 2, we see the top essay for creative arts mentions manga, drawing, art, etc. So it's the highest essay for that topic. But you also see that it mentions a lot of things involving mental health and wellness, ADD, schizophrenia, and mental disorders. So presumably this essay would also receive a high score for a mental wellness, mental health topic. So we can use these topic scores to calculate correlations between various information or characteristics about the schools and applicants. And in this case, we chose percentage of Latinx students at the school, average applicant GPA from the high school, and reported household income for the applicant. And as you can see, for community arts and leadership, if your essay scores high on community arts and leadership, you're less likely to come from a school that has a lot of Latinx students, right? It's a negative correlation. This shows that there's a variety of statistical relationships between the things that students write about in their essays and school characteristics, as well as personal characteristics, as we see in reported household income. And just to note, all of these correlations are statistically significant. Next, we did hypothesis testing using ANOVA for school types and topics. And here we can see that if a student writes about community arts and leadership, it's distinctive. You can tell, and it's distinctive, the school type that they come from. So here we can see that students coming from distance schools are less likely to write about it than students coming from local or selective schools, and they're distinctive, right? For aspirations to help family, we don't see any significant differences. But again, this shows that the prevalence of topics are different depending on the school type you go to. And to conclude, here's Anthony.
Thank you, AJ. So just in closing, in about the last 15 seconds we have, we found that we are able to use structural topic modeling to identify a relationship between school characteristics and what students write about in their college essays, and therefore represent a way that schools and students co-produce these essays that reflect the context in which they attend school. We have future plans for continuing this work as seen in our slide, including developing larger linear models to estimate these relationships and the inclusion of greater numbers of school level and individual level measures. Thank you for listening to our presentation, and we'll leave with our contact information if you have any inquiries or questions. Thank you.